Psychologists have studied optimists for decades, and they found something that won't be surprising to the pessimists in the room. Optimistic people are less accurate in their perception of reality. They overestimate their chances of success. They underestimate their risks. They remember the past as better than it was. They predict the future as brighter than it likely will be. It raises this question in the field of optimism that gets debated quite a bit. Is it better to be realistic and sad or to be deluded and happy? Like if you had to choose between those two, which would you choose? Would you rather be somebody who's honest and realistic but a little sad, or would you rather just be deluded and happy? Which one would you rather be? And maybe that's Paul here. Maybe Paul's just trying to talk all of us into being deluded and happy, trying to get us to ignore reality. And if that's what he's selling, I'm just not that interested. If joy requires me to pretend things aren't hard when they are, if joy means ignoring the diagnosis and minimizing the grief and acting like a marriage is fine when it's not, I'm not interested in acting like everything is great if it's actually really difficult. But Paul's just getting started. Look at what comes next, verses 5-7. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, in every situation, by prayer and petition and with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. There's a lot of beautiful ideas in this passage, but there's words he chooses that make these ideas really uncomfortable. Because again, he doesn't say rejoice in the Lord sometimes, he says rejoice in the Lord always. He doesn't say let your gentleness be evident to the people who deserve it. He says let your gentleness be evident to all. He doesn't say don't be anxious about the small stuff. He says don't be anxious about anything. He doesn't say when things get really bad, try praying. He says pray about everything. And so there are 4 words he uses in 3 verses: always, all, anything, and every. Always, all, anything, and every. You take these out, I'm great with this passage. But these words, depending on your circumstances, depending on what you're walking through, always, all, anything, and every, are pretty difficult. In English class, this might be a time where you would be reminded of the difference between qualifiers and universal qualifiers. A qualifier gives some wiggle room. Words like usually, sometimes, mostly. I like those words. Universal qualifiers leave no room at all. Words like always, every, and all. Paul uses these 4 universal qualifiers that just don't leave a lot of room. Always, all, anything, every. Not a lot of exceptions, not a lot of fine print. Those words don't give you an out when the diagnosis comes back wrong. Those words don't make an exception when your kids break your heart. Those words don't offer a pass when a spouse rejects you or a friend betrays you. Always, all, anything, and every. And so he writes these while he sits in a dungy prison cell. And so those words are a little relentless. They're somewhat exhausting. And they make me uncomfortable, not just for myself personally, but for you as well. Because I know what some of you are carrying. I know the weight that some of you walked in with. I know what's been done to some of you. And so we're left with a couple of options here. I think a couple of options. Either Paul is out of touch with reality, or he knows something we don't, and he's figured out something that we haven't. In these verses, there are 3 joy thieves, 3 things that steal our joy. I just want us to draw attention to. First, verse 5, let your gentleness be evident to all. First joy thief is the bitterness towards others. So there's this link here between joy and gentleness. And it seems a little bit out of place. But an ungentle spirit is a spirit that's marked with bitterness and resentment. That's an ungentle spirit. And that will kill your joy faster than anything. You cannot be joyful and bitter at the same time. They don't coexist in the same space. Now, we'll talk about this in a moment. There's certain things that should coexist. Like you can be carrying grief and joy at the same time. Like you can grieve and still have hope at the same time. But bitterness is like a squatter. It comes in uninvited, and if you just let it live there, it'll take over the whole house. The Bible in Hebrews talks about bitterness as a root, that if you don't deal with it, it just grows. It takes over, and pretty soon there's no space left for joy. And so Paul says, let your gentleness be evident to all.